Alright, so in this video we'd like to talk about the shading sections of the particles. So far we have noticed and we did the shading of the per particle attributes of the particles in the previous video, and we noticed that we do provided the opacity pp, incandescence pp and the RGB pp. We do also provided them with the necessary ramps and the shaders, but the only issue is that we are still not able to transform, or you can say sample out, these ramps, or you can say the per particle attributes of the opacity, incandescence and the RGB pp to the volumetric shader that we have already created inside the Hypershade, which is basically Embers underscore shader. Well, the clear reason is that there is no, as such, you can say mediator, or you can say the utility that will gonna transfer the attributes of the per particles to the shader. Because if you're gonna open the shader, you can notice that the color, transparency and incandescence, these three tabs are unlinked. So we need to fix them up first. So for that, we need to go inside the Maya and we need to find the utility sections. And if you're going to scroll down, you're going to find the particle sampler. Well, this excellent utility will going to help us in transforming all the necessary per particle attributes of the particles to this shader. So that's the reason this utility is existing. So I'm gonna click the shift and the middle mouse and drop over the Embers, and I would like to click the necessary things, which is basically the RGBPP, that stands for the color. So the RGB per particle will going to linked directly with this color, and the incandescence PP will going to link up directly with the incandescence. But there's a problem, and the problem is that we do not have any section, or we do not have any information of the transparency that we're going to get directly linked up to the transparency. Reason is why, because we created the opacity pp in the particle sections, and the issue is that opacity is being a single channel attribute, and here in the transparency we do have the RGB, so it would be difficult for us to link that up. And secondly, another reason is that opacity and transparency, they both are inverse things. So we do have the opacity full, that means we have the transparency 0. So that's going to create a lot of problem. So we do have an alternative for that. First of all, we need to go down a little bit and need to find a reverse utility that we're going to take care of everything. So for that, the particle sampler info will going to get dropped on the reverse with the shift and middle click, and here we like to fix the opacity, that is over here, the opacity pp, and here we like to link that up with the input x, y and z. Okay, so now we are completely ready to fix our connections, and this output we're gonna go get directly to the transparency, or you make it click and go shift middle click and drop that thing over here, and the output will be get linked up with the transparency. All right, so that is completely understood, I guess. So the good thing is that now I'm going to click the particles control A, and I'm going to move towards the Embers shader. We can see that we have successfully created and established a link to the color, transparency and live incandescence to the shader, and it is obviously going to follow the live, color, transparency and incandescence. That live, we're going to talk about the per particle age that we have already given to our particles, which is the lifespan 3.5 to the 1. Okay, so from that aspect we are completely done, and we need to tweak certain things inside the shaders. Well, if we're going to go inside the transparency, we do have something called as translucency. Well, in this case there is no translucency required, and we also don't want the built-in noise, so put that thing to the down. So once we are done with this, our whole section for the shading is completely done. So now to see the impact of the particles, but before we begin with that, I would like to create the necessary layer for our rendering of the particles, and then we'll start taking the renders. Okay, so we're gonna click the particle systems and name by the Embers, and like to create a layer and add the selected one. So if you're gonna go here with the double click, let me just gonna put it to Embers underscore rendering, and that is fine. And now we also need to put the tree so that we can take out the alpha, or you can say with the help of the use background utility, we're gonna hide the unnecessary sections that are, as you can see that the Embers are also coming at the back of the tree. So we're gonna select the tree and select the Embers and add the selected objects. So for that, we have already understood the shader in our previous module. I think so, module 3, I guess, where we describe the shading of the fluids. So the similar thing, which is the tree use background that I use inside the fluid sections, I'm going to provide here also. And you just need to select the tree and let's say right click, assign material to the viewport selections. But we also do need to take care regarding the Mendeley approximation editor that we use for the particles. Similarly, we are also required to use here, which is n subdivision, set that into the 3. But just for my demonstrations, I am putting the value to 0 so that I can get the quick render preview. And I think so we're done with that one. So now I'm going to take the render and let's see what exactly is coming up. So I'm going to take the render of the particles, and it won't going to take a lot of time, hardly 3 seconds. But here we can see that no problem, no doubt, we are getting the values of the opacity. We can also see that the color ranges are being getting changed, but the image is a little bit dark and we are not getting the, we can say the essence of the ambers. So what we're going to do first is that, if you remember, I just dropped the values of the color range inside the incandescence ramp. So I need to go to the edit ramp and need to open the color balance and put that thing back to its previous value. Or what we could do, that we may gonna increase to 1.5 or maybe 1.25. So with that, you're gonna notice that the particles will get a little bit more brighter, as you can see on the viewport also. So if I'm gonna take the render again, you're gonna notice some few changes. Well, it's pretty still dark, but still better than the previous one. Well, the only issue is that we do not have the light, so we need to put the light here. So for the lighting, it's pretty simple. We need to go to the outliner. We do have the light group, so I'm gonna take the key light from the light group and add selected. Okay, so with that, the key light is done, and I could scale them up, avoiding the direct scale. Instead, go to the object display and increase the locator scale. That is a pretty much good option. So for now, let's just remain the value and directionality of the light to be constant, and I'm gonna click the Control A. Well, let's take the intensity back to the 1, and under the shadows, we're only gonna use ray trace. There is no use for the depth map, and rest everything remains the same. Now I'd like to take the render. I'm sure we're gonna get some better results. Yeah, that is pretty much okay. So now you can see that the particles have started catching up with the change, and they're being a little bit more incandescence. And the rest we're gonna leave it for the composting. We're gonna improve it. We're gonna add some few filters, the layers of the screen, and some motion blurs, and we can get the depth from the composting part also. All right. And if you want the particles to be get a little bit more, you can say glossy, or you can say more shiny, you can go inside the RGB PP again and can take the advantage of the color gain, and here I can take the value of the 2. So now if we're gonna take another render, you're gonna notice some more changes, and I think so that is pretty much okay. The rest thing we can take care inside the compositions. Okay, the last thing again we like to do with the incandescence is that we can bring down the saturations. Here you can see the saturation is pretty high, and the value is little less, so we can increase the values, not a problem. Similarly for this case also, the value is 1, but can take down the you can say the saturations, and here in this case also take down the saturation a little less. So now if we're going to take the render, you're going to see some more changes, and that is pretty much amazing. Now we are getting the exact colors for the ambers, and there's a lot of change. Okay, so with that, you are done with the shading sections. Now what we could do is that we could just start learning the process of the rendering inside our next clip. Okay.